This is Father Matthew's channel on the Autistic Priest YouTube channel, and I think one of the things we can often confuse with autistics in prayer is to focus so much on those first little bit of prayer and not to move to the next stage, because I think once we autistics have a difficulty in that first stage, but we have a great advantage in the later stage. And let me explain. I think a lot of times in the first stage there is a difficulty in the theory of mind. As most of you who are following things like this channel would probably know, the theory of mind is the idea that I know what you're thinking. A very basic thing would be you have two puppets. One puts a ball in a basket, then leaves the room, and puppet B moves the ball from the basket to the box. Puppet A comes back in. Where do they look first? Well, they're going to look in the basket because that's where they thought it, not just the box, because I already saw it in the box. I know it's there. Very simple one, but I think a lot of times we can struggle with that on an emotional, psychological level, with more complex things, even as we get older. And getting the theory of mind of God is a whole other step. It's a little bit kind of a step beyond, because God isn't just another person. He is a person, but he isn't another human person. He's a divine person. And how do we understand him as a divine person? How do we understand what's going on in his mind? We can struggle with that, and I'll do another video on that sometime. But beyond that, we have something that's very amazing. We as autistics often struggle with the communication loop. So when I say a word, what's the process? What's the communication process? Well, let's say I say dog. So I have to have something in my mind, some kind of four-legged canine in my mind. Maybe I have my pet Ginger, well, dead pet. She was my dog when I was younger. Or Rover or Katie. We've had various dogs when I was a kid. And I have to take that concept dog, I have to transmit it into a communicable language, whether it's D-O-G or the sounds of those dog, and then you have to hear that dog, and you have to then translate that back into a concept, whether that's a concept as a lot of people have, which is a very general idea that then they have specifics of, or as we autistics will tend to do, we'll tend to go from the specifics to the general. But either way, it's that whole process, and we often struggle with that process because it's hard to sometimes think, well, where does this categorize? Because I realize, like, this category of, animals are dogs, and this category of animals are cats, but then I see some other predatory animal. Maybe I see a hyena. Now, a hyena is a dog, but it's not quite so obvious immediately that it's a dog, and not a cat, and not a whole other category of carnivorous mammal. And we struggle with that, and we struggle also when other people say things to take those and bring them into concepts in our mind. And that's why a lot of times we need to have a lot of examples first. Now, one thing we can get with God is that once we get past that initial stage, once we get past the level we can understand a little bit of theory of mind with God, we can understand, okay, God loves me, what does that mean, and things. Then I can communicate with God telepathically. I don't need to do that whole process of concept, language, spoken word, hearing, language, concept. I can communicate to God the thoughts of my mind directly, and he can communicate to me directly what he thinks. And it doesn't need a language. It doesn't even need an image, although a lot of times it does come in images, I'm one of those people who a lot of times, a lot of the gospel passages, I have a super vivid image of it in my mind. Sometimes I even have trouble communicating exactly how vivid that is. To give you an example, let me say that I thought the Passion was a little less vivid than my vision of Jesus carrying the cross. And so that's the kind of vividness that I have in my mind. And I can't really communicate it word for word all the time. But when I go to prayer, I can communicate it without language, without words, without sounds, directly to God's mind, and He can communicate back to me what He wants me to learn that day from that. And as such, I think once we get past that first stage, we autistics can have a great sense of prayer and grow in those deeper levels of prayer in a way possibly even faster, even deeper than a lot of neurotypicals can do. And I think this is something that's beautiful about autism, that ability to communicate without words, especially when we have that kind of quote-unquote telepathic communication with God. And I hope that this helps you, those of you who are struggling with prayer, or even those of you who get a little bit beyond it, not to worry that your prayer doesn't have words. The deepest levels of prayer don't have words. That's not even supposed to be part of it as you get to the deeper levels. But what's supposed to be part of it is to express that love back and forth between me and God. Hopefully you all found that helpful. If you like these type of things, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope I can do more videos like this.